Thank you, Mr. Gates. With that, I just want to go first to you, Mr. Prince. You said you roughly have about 3,500 at the peak of Blackwater, correct?
That's right.
Secret Service currently has approximately 7,000, approximately. What was your highest annual revenue, if you don't mind me asking, give or take, for that many operations?
Ooh, for that, the protective mission was about 2,500 to 2,800, and that revenue would have been around $600 million.
So $600 million for that.
Again, that's deploying in a war zone where 41 of our men, my men, were killed in
So
action.
safe to say, if you had $3.3 billion allocated to you, you could have done some even more miraculous things with resource and assets, correct?
I'll give a simple comparison. Around 2005, George W. Bush wanted to grow the size of the Border Patrol. I remember being called to a congressional hearing then because they compared what it would cost us to train a new CBP agent versus what the federal government was going to take. And our figure came in at 1/3. And their figure was actually higher than sending someone to Harvard for 4 years, and that's to train a guy for 4 months. That's it. So it's the federal government blows money.
That's
like I said
exactly
in my testimony.
point. And my point is that the failed metric of government, whereby the more we spend, the better outcome we receive, is a flawed and failed measure, which is why we're at $36 trillion in deficit. And the reason I use that $3 billion, as you know, Mr. Prince, is because that's the actual amount that appropriators have allocated to the Secret Service, which means that, to Dan Bongino's comment, they shouldn't be utilizing past equipment to serve tomorrow. They should have more than enough assets and resources in place with a $3 billion budget. Would you not agree?
Certainly.
And I want to go to you, Mr. Bongino. I want to point out some things because culture failure, as my colleague has pointed out and others, I want to mention a couple of things. August 14, 2024 is reported failure that a Secret Service agent abandoned her post without permission to breastfeed child before Donald Trump was scheduled to arrive in North Carolina. August 12, 2024, it was reported that a Secret Service special agent who was an official site agent for the July 13 Butler PA rally is under investigation for posing videos and photos for protective assignments to social media. July 27, 2024, a Secret Service agent covered the security camera of a local salon in Pittsburgh, Massachusetts, before an event featuring Kamala Harris where the salon was closed, but opened it up without approval and utilizing restrooms for an hour and a half while the building's security alarm was going off. July 2nd, 2023, it was reported that a former Secret Service Director Cheadle and senior agency leader sought to destroy the cocaine found in the White House in July of 2024. The evidence was not destroyed due to pushback in individuals in the Secret Service Forensic Service divisions. May 2024, a man enters the U.S. Secret Service Miami field office through a propped open door and was not removed from the building until the following morning. April 24, 2024, a special agent assigned to Harris's detail had a mental breakdown where the agent is reported to have physically attacked the commanding agent in charge at the base after verbal disputes with other agents. Sometimes during 2023 and 2024, at least 2 people breached President Obama's Hawaii residence. Though the president wasn't there at the residence, his 2 daughters were on premise at the time. April 2023, a drunken intruder entered the home of National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in the middle of the night. The man was able to gain access to Sullivan's home despite 24/7 Secret Service protective services in Sullivan due to the sensitive nature of his position. Now, I want to go back to a comment that you made, Mr. Bongino, where you said none of these problems are new. I think just the list of those that I've just mentioned shows that this is not a new problem, but it's existed for quite a while. And with a $3 billion annual budget, I would think that we would start evaluating those mistakes to make those corrective actions. Would you agree with the things that I've listed, with the budget that is allocated, that there should be a much better provision of security for protectees than what you're seeing today?
Oh, there's zero dispute about this. You know, Mr. Prince's company had accountability. People fire him and find a new company if he lost a protectee. You can't fire the Secret Service. 18 U.S.C. 3056, they're obligated to protect him. The Secret Service has a culture problem, Congressman. I was an instructor in our training academy in Beltsville, Maryland for 3 years. I ran operations over there, taught investigations over there, spent a little time in the Control Tactics Unit. I was there for 3 years. Unfortunately, I can't count on one hand. I would need probably two and toes as well to count how many agents who could not meet even basic protective functioning skills and criminal investigative skills, but who met other criteria completely irrelevant to job performance, who were pushed through and told with a wink and a nod, this woman or man needs to graduate. Well, why? They're clearly incompetent. Every instructor who's encountered this person has said this person's incompetent, to the point where in judgment drills, they're killing the protectee in the judgment drills. That's kind of not what we do. You're not supposed to shoot the protectee yourself in a simunition drill. And you would say things, you would hear things, excuse me, from special agents in charge, and I encourage you all to look into this, how the training center works and how they graduate students, where they would say, well, that person files a lot of complaints, like EEO complaints. Okay, well, are they real? That sounds serious. Sounds like a serious thing to me. I take that stuff seriously. And they would say, well, they file them enough that it's become a nuisance and they're not really legitimate, but because this person files a lot of complaints, we need to graduate them. Some of those people now, matter of fact, not just a few, but many, are out on protective assignments now. And again, this
So
is
what
not—
you're saying is that DEI plays a major role, not meritocracy, with regards to the current culture that has been fostered.
No, not a. No, the major role. The Secret Service right now is dominated by DEI. It's not a role. It's the role. You ask agents on the president.
And I think that everyone's heard me say before, DEI equals DIE. You know, DEI stands for didn't earn it. And
Well,
we
it
need to
did
be
for
very
Cory
cautious in how we
So
do this.
ask his family.
Correct. I just want to move on briefly with the time. Mr. Schaefer, I just need you to kind of confirm the no's. And when I say confirm the no's, you'll understand. Didn't take the communication platform that was given by local forces, correct?
That's correct.
Didn't take the surveillance drone offered by local forces, is that correct?
That is correct.
Didn't show up for the morning briefing to ensure that last-minute planning could be accounted for.
That is correct.
Didn't take any necessary measures to talk to the Kubota dealer, who was 400 yards away to the 12 o'clock direct line of sight, to even see whether or not they could gain access to that rooftop or talk to the owner.
That is correct.
Did not access the water tower, which has the highest vantage point, and provide oversight that would have also looked at the AGR building.
That is correct.
You know, I'm looking at all this and I'm noting a lot of no's of things that didn't happen. And unfortunately, because we've allowed this to go on for weeks and weeks, we're now going to be faced with the fact that they're going to be memorializing all these documents to reflect July 9, July 10, July 11, dotting I's, crossing T's that wasn't actually going forward. Now, I want to ask you something, Mr. Prince, because you know this all too well about counterterrorism operations. We know for a fact that we have an open border with roughly 10 million people that's come across. We know that cartels are cheering on President Joe Biden as the employee of the month every single month. When you think about 2018, where you had $500 million in revenue from cartel to now $13+ billion in revenue. If you knew a president was coming in that would put things like remain in Mexico back in place, secure our borders, and cut your revenue, you have the training, you have the assets, you have the revenue, would you deem that person as a threat and want to take that individual out?
It's a very simple answer, because you can see what they did in the last Mexican election that just happened a few months ago. They killed 27 conservative candidates, assassinated while campaigning.
And noting that you had the successful counterterrorism operation that eliminated the shadow master, Qasem Soleimani of Quds Force, as well as for Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes, who led the Iranian proxy militias of Iraq, would you deem that as them declaring a fatwa to increase your threat profile as an individual protectee?
Certainly the Iranians would see it as a risk worth taking.
And you also note that a question that needs to be asked of the FBI is that on July 12th, a 46-year-old Pakistani male named Burchan was actually captured, who had also plotted assassination against President Donald J. Trump and 35 elected officials. The question is how did you think an individual who's on a terrorist watch list, landed in Houston, Texas, was questioned by the FBI, and I would love to hear his answers because they must have been spectacular, and then released, noting that this individual flew from Pakistan to Iran for 4 days prior to this. Would you note that as very questionable?
Again, you can put him in the long list of other people that don't belong here, that our federal government is failing to do their job.
Thank you. With that, I have run out of my time. I will now hand it over to